Hello, everybody, and welcome to this fast chat titled. I hope you're ready for this one. Enterprise connectivity in disruptive times. We had to go with an epic title because the conversation is going to be equally epic. I'm Bill Clayman, co-founder and CEO of Apollo.us and the contributing editor here at Network Computing. And joining me today, once again, is Matthias Friedstrom, Vice President and Chief Evangelist. What an amazing title over at Arelion. Welcome, Matthias. It's good to have you.
Hello, Bill. Good to be here.
Okay, all right. Listen, I'm only going to say this word a couple of times. An acronym that you may have heard of, AI, right? We live in a time when AI is rewriting the rules of what feels like everything from how we talk to coffee machines to self-healing enterprise network connectivity. Like our way of connecting is more in the spotlight than I think ever before. And today, Matthias, I'm so excited to talk to you about this topic and to break down what's changing the core, why it still matters at the edge, and why building smarter, more resilient networks, it's not just an IT problem anymore. It's a survival strategy. So let's go ahead and dive in. That's why it's called a fast chat, right? I've had my caffeine, and so have you. We're gonna not have a 30-minute conversation, but we're gonna dive right into the topic. Okay, Matthias. First question. We're gonna dive right in. Inner core versus access. We've learned about these new types of networking architecture, but it's not just calling it what it is. There's different needs and different solutions. Let's demystify this a little bit. Inner core versus access. Get us started.
Yeah, no, I think that's sort of one of the things that we see enterprises looking for today. Previously enterprises bought the same type of connectivity everywhere. They just found a provider, and the provider could provide them with Ethernet circuits everywhere, and it was fine. They bought the same thing everywhere. But what we're realizing and what we see when enterprises building their network is that they actually have different requirements for different places in their network. The further out to the edge, the less bandwidth need and the less latency heavy. And there's a lot of stuff they should think about. And that's why we're trying to tell everyone, your inner core of the network, that's where the heavy lifting is going to happen. That's where the largest traffic flows are going to happen. That needs special attention. That's where you need to be careful. That's when you need to select the right provider with the right attitude and the right network. While further out in your network, you can be a bit sort of not spending all your money there. You can buy simpler solutions out there. And that's why I think the ecosystem today is so good. You can have providers who can provide the inner core perfectly, and you can have providers who can provide lower bandwidth in the outskirts of the network. And you just need to look through your network to see where you have all your requirements.
I love that network architecture based on context. Just don't just deploy everything for everyone. Really focus on the needs of those separate parts of the network. Matthias, that's a really great point. I'm gonna pivot just a little bit, right? We talked about AI. It feels like we live in a world that's just discovered oil, but hasn't invented the internal combustion engine. There's so much raw material and no one knows what to do with it. I really want to ask you a practical question. Honestly, I think this is one of the most important questions. AI in the realm of network operations. Matthias, help me like demystify this a little bit. How are enterprise customers actually using it and benefiting from it in the network space?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good cue into this. Obviously, we as an operator hope that AI is going to generate a lot of traffic. That's not what we're going to talk about here. That's a hope we have, of course. But then, of course, what we see as an operator, what we can do with AI and what customers can do with AI is, of course, there's a lot of stuff we can do in our operations. We can enhance the visibility of everything. I think telecom operators historically have had a big problem telling customers what's happened. Customers are calling us, it's broken. We sit there and say, yeah, it's broken, we know, but we don't know why. Hopefully today with AI, we can start to correlate a lot of data in the network and therefore have a fairly good guess of what had happened in a much earlier stage than before. And I think customers today are like, they want to know what happened. They want to know if they need to do something on their side. And if we can tell them that in seconds instead of half hours or hours, then that's a huge thing we can do with AI. And then, of course, the next thing we can start to do is also correlate data in terms of predictability. If we can see that this parameter and this parameter and this parameter at the same time goes down, then the likelihood of a failure within the next couple of hours is very high. We can inform customers that we need to do a quick change over here, and we change before the fault is happening. So I think from an AI perspective or a network operations perspective, there's a lot of stuff we as an operator can do with AI that's going to benefit all the enterprise customers. So I think all the enterprise customers should ask their operators, how are you leveraging AI in your operations, because there's a ton of things you can win here.
What a great reflective statement. Ask yourself, how are you leveraging AI today to make a real difference? Not an elephant on a unicycle, but actually making network operations far more effective and efficient. Talk about creating a resilient architecture. That was a really, really good point. Okay. Connectivity is king right now, right? You need a good architecture to stay supported, to, we talked about edge, AI, all of this. But as an enterprise, Matthias, you have public internet and then you have dedicated lines. How do you make a choice? What's the right approach?
And I think that's where it comes down to, the criticality of your traffic. I think enterprise architects should sit down and look at their traffic needs. If you have a small office in a small city and there are 3 people in that office, and the only thing they need is to get through the networks to some applications that they need, maybe Salesforce and a few other stuff. A broadband connection is perfectly fine. Use the public internet, get the connections through that one. If you have your headquarters there and you have 500,000 employees in there and they all need all these applications and they all need to be up and running all the time, then you shouldn't look at the public internet. You should buy a private solution from an operator, and they can tailor-made that solution to your needs, making sure you have the right bandwidth at the right time with the right resilience and right everything. And I think that's where earlier people were afraid of using the public internet for their corporate traffic. I don't think they should be afraid. Public internet is actually really, really good. Yeah, it's best effort. But it usually works all the time. You don't pay too much, get a nice broadband connection, maybe even a mobile subscription, and that's fine. If the traffic is not critical and it doesn't need to be up 24/7 every day of the week, then that's a good solution. And I think that's where people need to start to look at, you shouldn't overpay for everything because you just want to be safe. Public internet is fairly safe. There are safer solutions. Pay for those when you need them.
I think that's brilliant, and I think especially in the evolution of the resiliency of different types of connectivity points, you should make a good decision. Okay, this next question might make some people a little bit uncomfortable, and that's okay. It's good to be uncomfortable. So if you're on your Amazon shopping list listening to us discuss, come back real quick, because this fast chat's almost over, and this is an important question. The AFCOM State of the Data Center, so AFCOM, a sister company from Network Computing, just an FYI, the AFCOM State of the Data Center report recently released information about security, not just any kind of security, physical security around infrastructure, networking ecosystems, and so on. It's a concern. You can check out the report for more details, but it's important. And Matthias, I got to ask you this question: the importance of physical security, not only cybersecurity, in the realm of networks. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think this is kind of sad that we need to think about this, because I think historically we've never really cared about that, and we've never really told anyone where the network is. We've focused all our efforts on the cyber part of it, protecting customers from attacks in various shapes and forms. But I think with the world today and the geopolitical climate we're in, and everything that happens, and there is a lot of mad people out there, and therefore, physical security suddenly starts to become more important than ever. And I think, again, enterprises should ask their suppliers, their operators, do you have control of your physical facilities? Are they in good shapes? Being along a gas line is probably quite safe, because not many people are living close to gas lines or playing close to gas line. And those type of things suddenly starts to be important. Can you protect your sea cables much more? Can you do this? Have you run your cables through the city or through the forest, or where are they? And sadly, this is becoming more and more important. And I think the more an operator know about their network and the physical security of the network, the better it is. So unfortunately, a good thing, a thing that's coming, we didn't really want to have.
I honestly wish we could spend some more time on this. It was the first time we did that survey, the AFCOM State of the Data Center report, and the first time ever that physical security reached the top 3 concerns of operators and people working with this environment. Hey, that's a really good gold nugget for you just to go back and start asking those questions. Okay. In a world of persistent connectivity, I sound like I'm like about to announce a movie. In a world of persistent connectivity, but we're not going to do that. This is not a movie intro. We have to talk about that level of resiliency and redundancy, and more than ever before, right? AI, ChatGPT, but really just how connected we are. Matthias, take us home. Why are we more resilient? Why are we more redundant? And why is this more required today than ever before?
Yeah, and I think it really has to do with the physical security problem we just talked about. A couple of years ago, hyperscalers started to introduce sort of quadruple diversity to their data centers. They wanted data centers connected in 4 different areas, in 4 different directions, making sure that traffic could never ever go down to that data center. We thought they were crazy. We thought they overspent. But seeing the problems we have today, and the number of faults that's done by humans, and the number of outages, I think again operators really need to make sure that they have more than 2 routes between every 2 cities, and even up to 4 routes, and so on. So I think diversity and resilience is becoming more and more important. I also think a lot of applications, including AI on the network, needs sort of predictable latency. You probably don't need the lowest latency, but you need predictable latency. You need to know that the B route is almost equal distance as the A route. And then that can only happen if you build many, many routes in your network. So I think from that point of view, it's also important that you have this resilience in your network. So it's almost becoming a sort of a sales pitch that you have all these things. Dear customer, you will have a very predictable latency. So it obviously saves you from outages, but it also saves the traffic from being unpredictable. So I think diversity resilience is probably more important than ever.
I couldn't agree with you more, Matthias. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. I always learn something new from it. I think my big takeaways is AI enabled latency detection. I think that's going to be my favorite one today. Thank you so much, Matthias, for joining us today, and thank you for everyone else hanging out with us a little bit. If you want to learn more about the power of the modern network, you can check out Arelion.com, Arelion.com. In the meantime, stay connected, stay safe. Thanks for joining us again.